the morning of August 20th, 2010, employees working at the Vortex Spring Dive shop in Ponce de Leon, Florida, phoned 911 with reports of a missing person. Upon investigation, police came upon an abandoned pickup truck. Inside the truck's trunk was a wallet with over $1,100, a cell phone, and an ID. Ben McDaniel, age 30. Ben McDaniel was born on April 15, 1980. He was the eldest of the three, and his family resided in Collierville, Tennessee. Ben was an outgoing and boisterous young child. He enjoyed any sort of adventure and was always determined to master whatever new hobby he picked up, such as rock climbing, which he frequently partook in with his younger brother Paul. Ben was also exceptional at playing the piano, a talent he would use at family events. When Ben was entering high school at age 15, he really assimilated himself into the diving world. He began practicing diving in his family's in-ground pool and continued to hone his skills throughout the rest of his high school years. His interest in diving took a back seat, however, when he attended and graduated from the University of Memphis in 2004 with a degree in construction management. He started his own construction company in the years following his graduation. Ben had everything going for him: a happy marriage with his wife Sarah, a promising construction company with tons of potential, steady hobbies that kept him busy. What could go wrong? In 2008, while visiting his parents in Memphis, Ben found his younger brother and frequent rock climbing partner Paul unconscious on the floor. Ben tried everything to revive his brother, but his attempts proved unsuccessful. It was believed that Paul had suffered from a stroke, but later research proved that Paul's death was that of something more sinister and heartbreaking. The 22-year-old passed away from anoxic encephalopathy due to a combination of opiate and benzodiazepine toxicity. Upon discovering that Paul's death was an overdose that could have been prevented, Ben spiraled into a long-standing depressive episode. He partially blamed himself for Paul's death, and this suffocating guilt began to have serious repercussions on his marriage and construction business. Ben and his wife Sarah divorced soon after, and his business failed, leaving him with over $50,000 in tax debts owed to the IRS. Ben moved back home with his parents, Shelby and Patty McDaniel, while he attempted to get back on his feet. The McDaniels offered to support Ben financially if he were to take a sabbatical. A sabbatical, for those who don't know, is an extended period of paid time off from work. Ben agreed, hoping this could be the fresh start he needed to begin a new chapter in his life. His parents suggested he live in the family's beach house on the Santa Rosa beach off the Emerald Coast of the Florida Panhandle. It was around this time that Ben took up diving again, using it as a way to escape from the responsibilities and hardships of life. He accelerated at this in his time at Santa Rosa, frequently visiting the Vortex Spring in Ponce de Leon. The Vortex Spring is a freshwater spring that consists of a 200 feet basin with sloping sides and a cave which links the spring to the Floridan aquifer. The water is very clear, has no thermocline, and is steadily around 68 Fahrenheit. Fish and other wildlife inhabit the spring, which is a total measurement of about 1,642 feet. The main attraction of the Vortex Spring is its cave, which starts at 300 feet from the cavern at a depth of about 115 feet. At the entrance of this cave is a sign with the Grim Reaper on it, warning divers of the danger they are putting themselves in if they venture onward. 300 feet from the entrance, the cave has a rebar gate with a chain and padlock to prevent divers from entering without an employee working there to let them in. A diver must show proof of a cave diving certification. But this wasn't always the case. The Vortex Spring was riddled with controversies throughout the 1990s, as 13 different divers perished while exploring it. The state of Florida threatened to ban cave diving due to the growing death rate. But local divers developed a special cave diving certification, and for a long while, all was well. Which brings us back to Ben McDaniel. Ben loved the Vortex Spring atmosphere and would dive here rather frequently. So often, in fact, that he became a well-known figure around the area. Other regulars befriended him. The dive shop employees would occasionally discount him. Chuck Cronin, an employee at the dive shop, is reported to have been the first to sense a sort of uncomfortable ambiance radiating from Ben. He stated that while McDaniel had the proper equipment and considerable diving knowledge, he was often overly confident in his abilities and not shy about saying so. But this newfound lifestyle had begun to shape Ben into a well-improved version of himself. His parents and newfound girlfriend, Emily Greer, stated that Ben had begun to discuss the desire to move past the trauma from the last couple of years, to fully restart, get back out in the workplace, consistently improve his own personal life, to become a better person. Sadly, Ben never got that chance. 4 months after moving out to Florida on sabbatical, Ben returned back home with Emily to Tennessee to visit his parents. While there, he expressed his newfound optimism on life. He was working on becoming certified as a diving instructor so he could find a job in that field. He also expressed interest in gaining a certification in cave diving. Greer mentioned to his parents that Ben had plans of starting up a diving-related business. On August 14th, Ben left a letter behind at home, thanking his parents for their support over the last couple of years and a promise that he would look after them when they were older. On August 18th, he returned to the Vortex Spring. He completed one dive during the middle of the day. Fellow divers reported that they saw him closely examining the area around the cave entrance, as if he were planning something. Ben resurfaced and refilled his tanks at the dive shop, and then spent the rest of the afternoon by himself, alongside the spring testing his equipment and writing notes in his dive log. At around 7:30 p.m. that night, Ben embarked on one last dive. Chuck Cronin and Eduardo Terran were coming back from a dive around that same time. They saw Ben's lights on and his helmet as he descended underwater. Terran had suspected for quite some time now that Ben had been forcing the gate near the cave open himself. In an act of good faith and friendship, he ventured down there and unlocked it for him. He was the last person to ever see Ben McDaniel. 2 days after Ben's descent, employees noticed his truck was still there in the parking lot. With no sighting of Ben from any of the employees within the last 48 hours, they decided to call the authorities. Local authorities and divers all assumed at this point that Ben had drowned whilst out on his dive and that his body was down there. News spread quickly, and Police Captain Harry Hamilton falsely assumed that divers would be jumping at the opportunity to locate Ben, but was soon rudely awakened to the reality of the situation. Few divers in the entire world had the necessary abilities to even attempt such a treacherous journey. But some did. Divers investigated the small crevices all weekend with hopes of finding the body, but he was nowhere to be found. Over the course of the next couple of weeks, multiple attempts were made to locate Ben McDaniel. Ed Sorensen, a veteran cave diver and a recovery specialist with nearly 2,500 log dives, ventured out to Vortex Springs to help aid the McDaniels in finding their son. He made 3 separate dives and found zero evidence that any sort of dive had even taken place, let alone a body. Steve Keene, who had originally mapped the Vortex Spring Cave in 2003, was brought out to help. After 7 dives, he apologized to the McDaniels, telling them that there was just no luck. Searches continued all the way through November, but nothing was ever found. The McDaniels even went as far as to hire a private investigator to inquire into the matter, suspecting possible foul play, but nothing substantial was found. In 2013, the state of Florida issued a death certificate to the McDaniels, hoping this would help aid them in moving past the loss of their son. To this day, nobody knows exactly what happened to Ben McDaniel, and to this day, his body has not been found.